Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing well. My goal today is going to be to do my very first build guide for you, walking you through all the different choices that I've made on my Necro, why it's worked for me, and please feel free to take it. I'll create the link and share it later for you to be able to make it your own. Make the tweaks that fit your play style. I'm going to go through the choices I've made, why it's helped me. I've tuned it a little bit every week. There's a lot of inspiration from Macro Bioboy on his max roll build, as well as from other Necros, Skolm, Vega, Pons, and different things that I've seen across their builds that I've seen that work and that I've liked, but then made the tweaks to make it my own, and that's exactly what I recommend for you. So I just wanted to kind of go through each of these items and give you that opportunity to do the same for yourself. So what I'm going to do is start first and foremost going through the gear. What has worked for me, some alternative selections that I have as well. So the first thing I have here is the Harlequin Crest. Um, for a Blood Surge build, getting the extra life, the resource generation, the cooldown, it's just one of the most important pieces to have. Can you make it work without one? Obviously, there's alternatives that you can have. I would probably go with a Bone Storm shield on here if I did not have a Harlequin, and I'd be targeting things like mana, life, total armor, and those kind of things. Give me a little bit of defense on that helmet if I could. On my chest, I went almost purely offensive. So all stats, intelligence, damage, maximum life. And this isn't even the best rolls on most of these items, right? I'm at a mid-range roll on my all stats, low end on intelligence. I do have the max damage, but extreme low end on life. But I find this to be a very good balance of stats and pieces. And then what I do for the defensive side of it is I added the aspect for the hardened bones, which gives me the 20% damage reduction across the board. So regardless of what I'm fighting, how I'm having to deal with it, I get that damage reduction. That's hugely helpful. On the gauntlets, I'm targeting attack speed, I'm targeting critical strike chance. Overpower, you can swap that for additional intelligence if you prefer. And then obviously 4 ranks of Blood Surge. Now on here, I've seen different builds where they have targeted either the Blood Surge, striking again with the extra Echo of the Nova, which is what I have on here. I've also tried it with having it with the aspect where it just increases your attack speed so that when you're getting shrines, you're just putting out more damage as you crit. But I just really have found that this is a more consistent, even pace for my damage, and that is really important in certain aspects. There are certain things I'm going to target where I'm looking to spike my damage and hit those peaks, and then there's other areas where I just want to make sure I'm hitting a main basic level across the board for my damage, and I'll explain that in some of the strategy on some of the maps from previous weeks as well. Gotta have the tibbies. It gives you your resource back. It gives you a big damage boost. You're going to be zooming around the map, constantly evading, whether you're using boots with 3 evade charges or attacks, reducing your cooldown. Copy that or pair that with Unstoppable on your amulet, and your goal is to just constantly have this 40, X damage multiplier up, while also constantly getting your resource back. So it's a hugely beneficial item, and this is definitely a must-have. Thankfully, it's relatively common drop if you're doing Duro runs. On the boots, last week for week 5, there weren't any channeling shrines, so I went with attacks reduce evades cooldown for 1.2 seconds. If you have a map that has access to channeling shrine that you can work into it, it's going to be a little bit faster, and that you're going to constantly be able to use that unstoppable over and over with those 3 charges. But there's a little bit of dealer's choice, right? Preference, your play style, the map, and the shrines that you're going to have each week. So trying to have a pair of both gives you the most flexibility. But on both boots, you're targeting intelligence, movement speed for 4 seconds after killing an elite, and shrine buff duration. Shrine buff duration being the highest you can possibly get it. 18 is really that gold standard that you're targeting. But anything 16.5 or above is going to be a sweet spot, and then obviously you're just trying to min max after that. On here, you are going ahead and doing the unstoppable, giving you an extra 25%. Now, if all of my movement speed items across all of my skills and all of my equipment proc all at the same time, I'm blowing past that movement cap at 200%, which is where you get capped out at. That said, those things aren't always happening all the time. So your goal is to try and find a way to have the combination of your base movement speed, which mine is, I believe, about 160% outside of town when I'm in a combat area, and then all of those individual items constantly triggering to keep me as close to that cap as possible. So that's what you're going to see across some of these other items. Now on my weapon, I do have a grandfather stacked with the overpower damage there from that standpoint. I've seen several people rocking a focus with a one-hander. That also is a way to allow you to get a second offensive skill set. Like I said earlier, that ability to increase your attack speed is another key element. There's been quite a few Necros at the top of the leaderboards that are, pushing really big numbers that way. So grandfather is not a requirement. It definitely is helpful. It helps with the peak damage that you get on bosses, as well as with your maximum life, which is awesome. So it's super helpful there. We also do have another Uber unique in the Ring of Starless Skies. From here, it's keeping your resources down. It's giving you a lot of damage, items. It's super helpful from that standpoint. Highly recommend it. This one was the bane of my existence. It took me it never dropped naturally. It took me like multiple grandfathers, multiple Doombringers, and other Ubers that I had to delete back when it was 5 to be able to finally craft this bad boy. Then I do have a Ring of the Sacrilegious. It's a good roll on the bottom half. The top is, pretty good. Definitely wish I had more life, especially for a Blood Surge build. There's definitely opportunities between my chest piece and my Ring of the Sacrilegious to have my damage cap be that much higher. And then on my necklace, my amulet, that's where I've got Metamorphosis, again, targeting movement speed, shrine buff duration, damage, as well as then Tides of Blood, passive. Now, I do not have a second movement speed on here. You do not need to have it on both the amulet and the boots for the after killing elites. Again, those are both the same trigger when they take place, so you don't need to have them on both items. So if you get a pair of boots that instead has a different FX and you're able to put this up here, that's great. You can go either or. Other really good options instead of just damage are cooldown reduction or essence reduction are good options here. I've also seen quite a few builds that are rocking Coalesce Blood versus Tides of Blood. Coalesce Blood is going to be more on that even keel from a damage standpoint. Tides of Blood is going to be that pops of damage when you get that overpower. I personally like the pops of damage. That's why I also, a little bit different than others, have targeted a higher attack power on my Paragon board and my life on my Paragon board, because for those moments that you do not have a shrine, whether it's that first boss or a shrine runs out, or you've only got lethal while you're running your routes and you don't have something like artillery that is helping really juice things down, or blast wave that is really juice things down, you need to find ways to kill bosses as fast as possible. From that standpoint, you want to get those peaks. You want to just shoot that damage through the roof, plow that guy down so that you're not waiting there any longer than you have to before that boss literally just gets deleted. So that's a big goal there. You'll notice if you over here on my attack power, very high. I'm sitting in town, so I'm at just under 41.4 is where I'm at, so just under 41.5. And when I'm out of in town or in a battle space, that jumps up another 1,000 based on other damage modifiers that only trigger when you're in a combat zone. My armor is very low. You don't need it, right? You do not need to have a lot of armor. Do I wish I had a little bit more? Yes, and I'll show you a couple alternative pieces of gear. These are pieces that I keep on me at all times that, depending again on the map that I'm on, depending on the types of mobs that I'm fighting, the shrines that are available, I may tweak these a little bit just to help balance things out. My life also a lot higher than most other people. Now, from some of these other items, the couple of chess pieces that I play with, obviously I've got intelligence damage here. This one is if I'm feeling a little bit too squishy for some reason. I swap out this one, which gives me a little bit more damage reduction because I have that built in. So now between the two of them, I'm getting almost 30% DR. I'm also getting more maximum life. That's really the biggest piece that I'm still searching for in the perfect chest piece that I don't have, is, having the chest piece that I have on my body, or on my guy right now equipped, where it's all stats, intelligence, damage. But if that maximum life was at a higher level, and if that intelligence was at a higher level, I would be doing, even that much more damage. And the reason your life is so important for those peaks of damage is your overpower is calculated based on your amount of life that you have at the time that it triggers, as well as the amount of fortify, and a combination of those two. So the higher life, the more damage you get from that. The higher your life, the higher the amount of fortify that you can have, which means, again, the higher amount of damage you get from that. So this chess piece here is one that I'm trying to re-roll. I do have, this is a little bit more defensive because it has the armor on it. So this is another one that I can swap in as needed. I'd really like to get, that maximum life to be a flat damage one, so that I only ever have one damage item or one defensive item on here. Although I just talked about how the life can help create that peak, it doesn't have anything that also helps during my everyday killing that is taking place. And then here's my other set of boots. So again, almost identical from a stat standpoint. I wasn't able to get intelligence on this one, but I did get all stats, which is still a good roll on that. Have the double movement speed and have the maxed out shrine, buff duration, which is awesome. It's definitely what helps me out. I do have a couple of rings that I occasionally swap out. The Ring of Starless, or not Starless Skies, but on the Ring of Sacrilegious. These are for that damage speed, right? So I'm looking for Essence, maximum life, critical strike chance, or critical strike chance with some additional damage items. So it just kind of depends on, again, what I'm dealing with, where I'm going, the types of mobs I'm fighting, and what I'm working through on that from that standpoint. So that's kind of like an overview, and as a quick look at where I'm at. On my resistances, I'm pretty high. I keep 2 diamonds in, as well as 1 skull at all times, for the most part. Occasionally swap those out again as needed. The last couple of weeks there's been a lot of poison, so I wanted to make sure that my poison was maxed out between my board and my innate traits. Obviously, one of the nice things is the higher your intelligence, sitting here with a base of 959, for example, the higher your resistances are going to be. That's a nice thing about being a necromancer. So you get a little bit of that innate defense on your resistances, just built in by the nature of what we're already targeting for damage and other things. Based on how my board is laid out, I'm just under 1500 critical strike damage percentage and an overpower of a little over 3200. So that's definitely where I'm focusing a lot of my intentionality for damage production. Just kind of scrolling through some of those. Again, my life is way up there. My movement speed shows 149.5 in here. That's because Death's Reach passive does not account for your extra speed when you're in town, so that adds another 12% onto here. So definitely, sitting at that max most of the time between triggering from 1 of 3 spaces, either killing an elite, becoming unstoppable, or from getting damage while blighted. So if any of those 3 things or a combination thereof, I am trying to stay at that 200% movement speed cap as much as possible at all times, right? So like my elite kill movement speed, you add that onto my 160, I'm automatically capped every time I kill an elite, right? it just keeps me at that cap. But if I haven't seen Elite for a few seconds, or as I'm working around, going from one of the dead zones, whatever the case may be, I'm getting that from either my blighted speed, and or from making sure that I'm triggering the unstoppable from my necklace to, or sorry, from my boots to be able to give me that extra 25% speed. So again, just trying to stay pegged at 200% as much as possible is the name of the game here. So on the sacrifices, pretty straightforward for a Blood Surge build. Nothing surprising here for anybody. I'm going with the skirmishers, the bone mages, and the iron golem. Ooh, well, that's not good. So hold on one second. Never fun to have that happen in the middle of a live stream. Not sure what happened there with Blizzard servers, but I'll go ahead and pop that right back up. We'll pick up right where we left off. So no harm, no foul there. Easy, easy peasy. So as I said, pretty straightforward with the minion sacrifices from that standpoint. Nothing surprising there at all. Now, when you get to the skill tree, this is where there's a lot of variation based on your playstyle. Just doing basic here, hemorrhage, enhanced, and hemorrhage, just to move on to the next level. Nothing special. It's not on my board. I don't use it at all. 1 on living energy. Again, it's just a gateway drug to get to the imperfectly balanced to be able to max out that damage. All the points you can in a blood surge, and then obviously doing paranormal blood surge to try and smoke that as much as possible. Now I do have 1 point in a blight, and I'm doing that because I'm wanting to get supernatural blight. This is again for those moments where you don't have an artillery or a shrine that is helping you just nuke a boss quickly. You need to find other ways to stack that damage as quickly as you possibly can. So this extra 20% multiplicative damage, you just pop them with that on that boss. Go ahead and hit your Decrepify, that I'm going to talk about here down lower, or sorry, your Iron Maiden I'm going to talk about down here lower. You're stacking damage on damage on damage. You want that as much multiplicative damage stacking so that as soon as your overpower bursts, you just see a boss life go from max to nothing instantaneously. I do keep 1 here on Hued Flesh, and this is just to help generate a few corpses as I'm going through. This is helping with my resource gen. It's helping with my blighted corpse explosion, which you're going to see down here. So just have a little bit of things in here. There's no extra points in here. This is all coming from my ring and my Harlequin. So 1 point here, and then I am doing the blighted corpse explosion. This is twofold. One, there are times where you're killing enemies and they spawn others, like the spiders, for example. And sometimes you're going so fast because you've got a glory shrine on and you're just trying to get from point A to point B as quickly as you can, and those are spawning. You can't always just sit there and wait. And sometimes an artillery shrine will shoot behind you. Sometimes your blood surge will get those enemies behind you. But the blighted corpse explosion, leaving that blight on the ground, is going to help clean up a lot of the trash. Anything that maybe didn't get completely nuked by you as you're going by, it is getting cleaned up by this blighted corpse explosion, that dot that is ticking on them. The second part of that I'm going to show you down below is where it's giving you that extra speed. Over here, Grim Harvest, don't have it maxed out, just 2 points into it. Again, it's just about evening out that essence generation as you're going, moving from point A to point B. Obviously, you've got Tybalt's that is helping you get your resources back, but in a map like we had this week, it's important to make sure that you've got some balance on your resource, just simply because you don't have channeling. You never get that unlimited, gas card, so to speak. So you're going to need to make sure that it's refilling on its own every so often. Fueled by Death, just here purely for damage. We do have the Depth's Embrace. This is obviously Blood Surge. You're killing things when you're close to them, and you're wanting to be close to them, so you're needing to not take a whole lot of damage either. Death's Approach, this is that 12% movement speed that I was talking about. It's only triggered in town. And then over here I do have Amplify Damage on. Now when I show you my skill bar in a second, you'll notice that I don't have any points into Iron Maiden or Decrepify. And this is, again, it's dealer's choice. What is your play style on which curse you want to use? I personally prefer Iron Maiden because it does a little bit of damage, again, in case there's little stragglers, anything along those lines that I'm rolling through. It gets things ticking, so to speak, on any of the enemies that I use it on. But the key here is that there are times where you're going to want to pull enemies or bosses, and you're going to want to get their attention without doing a lot of damage. But you need to tick them off, right? You need to get some aggro, and so this does a little bit of damage, but it does not hinder their movement speed. So that's the one thing. Decrepify is a great debuff, but you're not really needing to debuff anything in here other than to get damage on them. And so what I don't want to, they're not going to hurt you. So what I don't want to do is slow them down. If I'm trying to get their attention and I want them to follow me from, where they spawned or where I encountered them to the spot where I want to kill them, then I need them to get there as quickly as possible. Every second matters when you're speed running, so that's super important to me. Over here, I'm going to take 1 point into gruesome meddling just because I have to. It is a nice bonus to get that extra healing. I do 3 points into coalesce blood. This is again purely multiplicative damage. You're healthy almost all the time, so this is just purely on top. This is why it's a good passive to have on your amulet if you do get it on there. Tides of blood, just where I have it. This one is a higher damage multiplicative, but it's only happening when it is overpowering. But because your overpowered number is already so high, this just again shoots it through the roof, right? You're just blasting people for millions upon millions of damage when those trigger, and so if you're smart about how to trigger them, that's a big piece there for you. Drain Vitality, this is where you're just getting that Fortify. You're constantly hitting things. You want your Fortify to get up in that first portion of the map that you're starting on. Again, that's just where your overpowers become that much more powerful over and over. Plus, it also gives you some damage reduction. Even though I have a few skills that I have to take in my board as I'm going through it for getting blood orbs, I don't care about creating them. I don't try and create them. I don't put anything here. It's a waste of points for the speed that you're going through. They're too unpredictable on where they're going to spawn, when they spawn, to collect them, to go out of your way, and so that it becomes more happenstance than anything else. And you need to be intentional when you're in the gauntlet. You want to be intentional at your choices that you're making. Even though I do have a Ring of Sacrilegious on, I currently do not have Corpse Tendrils on. Now, that is partially based on this week's map where I'm needing to move around as fast as possible, and I wanted to have Bone Storm on, so that was one more thing that was constantly counting as attacks on enemies along with my Blighted to be able to continuously reduce my cooldown, right? Because when you do Metamorphosis, it adds to your cooldown delay on top of what's already there, kind of like Juggernaut does. There's a reason nobody's running Juggernaut. You want to be fast. You want to have those speed boosts in your evades as much as possible. So I keep that up on there, but I don't do Corpse Tendrils because I wanted to have the Bone Storm. Now, the other piece about Corpse Tendrils is, again, it's all about intentionality. One of the big downsides on Corpse Tendrils is, especially if you're just using the Ring of Sacrilegious and you're not casting it intentionally, which you're not when you're doing the Gauntlet for the most part, is that you can't control which corpse it chooses to do Corpse Tendrils on. So if all of a sudden you're trying to move through a pack and you're trying to kill these guys, and Corpse Tendrils pops behind you and then pulls those enemies away from you, it defeated the purpose. You now either have to backtrack or you just miss them because you're going to keep going. And Corpse Tendrils, although it does damage, may not have had enough to knock them out. So again, I don't like the randomness, the part of it where it can take things out of your path in a way that you do not want them to be. So even though I have it because of my Ranks of Corpse skills, even though I have the Ring of Sacrilegious, I do not have it on my bar. Here's that Reaper's Pursuit. This is where I've got that extra 15% that is constantly, being triggered from that standpoint. And the reason I have all 3 points here is, again, if for some reason I've not killed an elite, I'm at roughly 160% movement speed, right? 161, 162. Most people, depending on what you get on your rolls, are going to be somewhere between 155 and 163, right? That's where it kind of caps out from equipment and other skills. So this gets me another 15%, which means I'm going to get past 175, which means then when I use my Unstoppable, I get my 25% bonus. Again, I'm pegged. So like I said, the name of the game is to find out how to get as many combinations of speed boosting effects to trigger and keep you at 200% movement speed as much as possible. Over here, standalone, this is just, I'm not hurt. I'm not really ever hurting for life, except on very rare occasions, and on those rare occasions, it's not worth giving up the extra bonuses to have that everywhere else. I am going ahead and getting those extra boosts to your sacrifices. This helps with your critical strike, your overpower, all those things are getting a boost of 60% to the sacrifices that you're made. Then over here, I've got Inspiring Leader. Even though I don't have any minions, this gives me an extra 12% attack speed while I'm going through things. Again, this one didn't show when you looked at my attack speed because it only shows up, just like Dust Passage, when you're not in town. So make sure when you're looking at your stuff and you're trying to compare to myself or anybody else that you see, that you're doing so in the same space. Whether if they're in town, that's when you're comparing your stats to them if they're in town and you're in town. And same if you're out in the gameplay world, because there are certain elements that only trigger when you're out in the gameplay world. Then Bone Storm, like I said, I'm doing this for a couple reasons. One is that 20% critical strike chance, paired with the ability to, hit things as you're going. It's just one more way to constantly be hitting things, even if you're moving, to be knocking down your cooldown on your boots, from that standpoint. And then, obviously, you got your Rathmas Vigor. This is your guaranteed overpower every 12 seconds, no matter what, paired with your Blood Surge at the top, where every fifth item or fifth person that you hit with your Blood Surge, you're gaining a stack and getting overpower. So you're constantly just smashing overpowers with as fast as you're attacking. That is your goal here. That is what you're trying to do. So that is everything on the skill tree. Now let's go ahead and look at the Paragon board. And it's a big board. So I'm going to go over here. This is a board that was foundationally built off of several different Necromancer builds. Macrobio Boy has his on max roll, as he puts out great builds, and if you're ever in doubt, just follow his, right? He's going to give you a great build foundationally across the board. But then as you get more comfortable with your playstyle, your needs, the activities that you're doing, that's when you can start to iterate. So that's what I've done here. So, this board starts off pretty similar. Again, I'm targeting a couple things when I do my board. So let me just kind of go through what's important to me as I'm building my Paragon board. First and foremost, I want to maximize the amount of points that I have to get farther in the board and to make sure I can get all the things I want to get in my board. So thinking of strategically, how do I get all the things I need with as few points as possible so I can move on to the next area or to the next ability or whatever it is that I'm trying to get to. So that's key number one. Number two, you're going to want to prioritize certain stats. So I am going to want to prioritize intelligence. So if I ever have a choice of pathway A and pathway B, and like I said, my first priority is how do I get everything with the most efficient amount of points. And if it takes 5 points to get from pathway A and pathway B equally, now I'm looking at which one has more intelligence. And then after intelligence, I'm then looking at which one has the most dexterity. What is that next stat that I'm looking for? And then willpower will be the third one. Strength is practically irrelevant for anything that we need to do, but intelligence is your damage, dexterity is your critical strike, willpower is helping you on your overpower. So all of those things are very good. So for instance, a lot of boards that have on here are using 3 points to go ahead and get this intelligence up here to be able to finish off their first glyph, which I have sacrificial in here because I'm wanting that 10% flat multiplicative damage, and I'm also wanting to get a little bit of a boost on my blue nodes that I do get that are in there. Obviously, all of these glyphs are expected to be at level 21 to be able to maximize their range and their space. But the key piece here is to do that, it requires 3 points. And I don't need that armor, and although I want intelligence, I don't want to waste it on this extra armor here, the extra armor here, and this 1 dexterity. If I can achieve it by simply, if on my path as I'm going, if I can achieve it by simply having these 2 points, I've netted the same minimum 40 intelligence that I needed to get to Sacrificial's bonus 10% multiplicative damage, but I've saved a point, right? So that's why I wanted to use this board to give as an example of the hierarchy that you should be looking at when you craft your boards, when you change the things that you're looking at that somebody else has created. I'm going to jump up here then to the next board, which is Bloodbath. This is your bread and butter, right? This is where you're getting a ton of damage, a ton of boost to the things that you do as a Blood Surge build. I come over here to the left, try and grab, my damage while healthy and all the overpower, as well as my, all those nodes that are here that are going to add to that. This is just pure overpower. This is pure offensive goodness. So you want all of those. And then you want to take the most efficient path to get to Bloodbath while at the same time grabbing all that intelligence. So just going to harp on it one last time. I could have the same point be here, but I'd be getting willpower. Instead, it's the same 1 point. I'm getting intelligence. Just trying to point that out to make sure that you kind of understand the concept of what that's happening. So going over here, I'm trying to pick up Essence. Essence requires dexterity. Just this boosts your critical strike damage. This is what's happening on a constant basis as a Necro. You're putting out a lot of critical strikes, so you want that to be as high as possible. So you're grabbing all of these as you can. I'm coming down here, I'm getting that damage while fortified because I'm going to be fortified all the time. It gives me the intelligence that I need to trigger the second part of the glyph. And it's also my gateway drug to get to these 2 blue nodes for dexterity, which adds a massive amount of critical strike damage. Again, pathing wise, I can use that same point, but I want dexterity as my second choice instead of willpower, right, as my third choice, from a hierarchy standpoint, to try and maximize my dexterity in that range. Now here's where certain things start to kind of vary from other builds and that are more personalized. I want the additive damage where I can possibly get it from fortification, because I'm always fortified. So that means it's a flat damage that's happening all the time. That's, again, it's about consistency. What are the things that you can trigger and keep up as much as possible? And then I'm also trying to target maximum life. So that's where I'm going for. That's why I go for this fortification versus this fortification, right? Technically, I could get to this one, damage while fortified, for that same 20%, but over here, I'm able to get to an extra 4% maximum life that stacks while also picking up these extra 2 maximum life. So I'm getting 8% maximum life boost by coming over here for that. My next board here is going to be Scent of Death. This is a pass-through board. I'm just trying to get through as efficiently as possible while picking up the best trade-off for the items that I have. So I'm coming up here, getting that big damage to healthy as well as critical strike damage. That's a massive, massive rare node. Make sure you get that one. Coming down here, I'm kind of doing that same offshoot thing you saw kind of over here on the Essence board, just picking up the random dexterities, doing the same thing here. I'm trying to be as efficient as possible while picking up all the willpowers, because I'm then going with the Dominate glyph. This is where your overpower damage just, again, skyrockets. It's all about stacking as much of this as possible on your build. And then when you're getting that overpower, all the damage they take from you and your minions goes up by another 12x, right? 4 or 5 seconds afterwards. Again, it's just the best glyph that you can have as an overpower Blood Surge build. You have to have it. So trying to make sure that you're maximizing that is very important. Going up here, the 50% damage to injured, great. The 10% intelligence is not needed. It doesn't help other than just my overall intelligence. but it's to be, again, the gateway drug to get to these willpowers, which, I mean, massive, right? That's where you're getting almost all of that extra willpower from, or overpowers. Those two nodes themselves are worth 100% of it. Trying to come very efficiently then over here to get, the Flesh Eater one. So again, with Ring of Sacrilegious, this is not up all the time, right? So this one is going to come up in spurts, and you'll feel it, because when you have a 40x multiplicative damage boost and you don't, it's very, very noticeable. But when it triggers, and it's going to trigger pretty frequently just because you're moving forward, right? It is super helpful in your ability to just literally annihilate bosses and nuke down things as much as possible. Because I do have the corporeal glyph in here, I get the 150% bonus on the blue nodes. So again, I'm targeting some resistance here. This is where I'm getting, between these three, I'm getting almost 14% resistance. It's very, very helpful. And then stacking a bunch of damage to elites, right? Picking up a little bit of extra dexterity on my way, but we're really targeting that, what is that, 20, 40, 60, almost 100% damage to elites. Additive damage is only so much, but when it's that much additive damage in that few points used, get it, right? Take advantage of it. Then I'm going to drop down here, and this is, again, another area where it kind of varies a little bit in my personal style compared to some of the others that are, out there. On Macrobio Boy's board on Max Roll, he does go with this board here, this Blood Begets Blood. Again, Blood Orbs, not consistent enough to be able to get it, so I don't waste any points coming over here to get this legendary node. But mine is mirrored. The reason mine is mirrored is I'm coming over here, I'm wanting to make sure that I'm getting that overpower damage and really boosting it up. And then I want the Imbiber Glyph here. This is where I probably vary the most from any others that I've seen. I do believe Pons also, who's a phenomenal Necro, he's on the top of the leaderboards. A lot of weeks. I think he was just number one for last week. Vega the week before, Pons the week before. Like, they are like just traded off at the top of the leaderboards for this. But Imbiber increases your base overall damage. Now, when you're doing other events, this may not always be. It's the driver on a golf course, right? I want to see my attack power as high as possible, but everybody knows you got to be able to putt to be able to actually score on a golf course. It's not just about a driver. That's kind of what Imbiber is in most parts of the game. Makes your attack power look really, really high, but because of how all the things are factored in, it doesn't actually do a whole lot for you other than, fill your ego. The reason it's important in the Gauntlet is the shrines that do damage are doing damage based on your base attack power. So the higher that you can have your base attack power, the higher those shrines damage output are going to be when you're tearing through things as much as possible. So that's why in this case, Imbiber is very, very helpful from that standpoint, and it's a little bit unique compared to other areas. I'm kind of sliding over here. Again, the damage after picking up a blood orb, I don't generate any blood orbs. It's not something I'm doing, so it doesn't help me, but it's a means to an end to be able to get to more overpower damage, as well as for one point that would normally give me 5 intelligence, I'm getting 10. So it's still a good investment compared to most scenarios, but it's really because I'm coming over here to grab those 3 overpower damages to boost on everything else. And then I'm coming over here and just grabbing that extra damage while healthy. From that standpoint, this is one of those pieces that could probably go away and get moved to somewhere else. It's not going to hurt me from anything from that standpoint, except for oops, sorry. I'm wanting to get that willpower. Sorry. Totally messed up there. Didn't realize what I was removing when I did that. So just coming over here to grab that extra, that willpower for that damage while healthy on that Imbiber that I was just talking about. Then I'm going to slide over here, and I'm actually picking up the Bone Graft board. So this is a Bone Spear board, And the reason I'm doing it is I've got just enough points to come over here and sneak my way down to 10, 12, and 14% maximum life. For this few amount of points to come over on this board and be able to come away with, a handful of stats, just like you would for anything else, but to go ahead and snag all of this extra life is more important to me than some other boards where they've used a less expensive glyph, such as Imbiber is, and instead, gone with something like maybe Amplify, where it doesn't. You're not trying to pump up and grab every single, willpower like I did, and then they're trying to get a 6 glyph, right? They're trying to go over there and get Exploit. Again, like I said, it's about how can I keep these things stacked as much as possible. The problem that I have with Exploit is, although it's really nice and it has a great ramp, I'm not staying next to anything long enough for that ramp to matter, right? It's just, I'm never making things vulnerable long enough to then hit them and build that amplifier up in the Gauntlet. If things are lasting that long, I'm doing something wrong and I'm going too slow. So I, again, am focusing on how do I kill things as fast as possible, especially the big things with lots of hit points. I need my attack power as high as possible. I need my overpower as high as possible, my critical strike as high as possible, and I need my life to be as high as possible, because that then triggers with my overpower, with my fortify, and all those things that I was explaining at the beginning. So that's what I am doing from a skill set standpoint. When I'm in the Gauntlet, I am also using my Heady Acrobatics Elixir. There have been times where I've used in the past, a Critical Strike Elixir, Elixir Cruelty, Elixir Fortitude, but this one really just makes a massive difference when speed is everything. They're not cheap to make, but you can craft them, which is the other nice thing. When you're working with Elixir Fortitude or Elixir Cruelty, you've got to find them, which is a lot of farming versus the Acrobatics Elixir, which you still have to farm for, but you can make them. So you can make them on demand. It's not just random complete luck. And then make friends with a few people that are farmers and trade them items that they need and try and get those. I also try and use Chorus of War as well as Sage's Whisper just to boost my intelligence and my all-around stats. So the 40 from there, the 25 from there, so that 65 puts me over 1,000 intelligence when I'm in the battle arena, so to speak. So just wanted to kind of give that overview, that build guide. I will go ahead and add the link in here below to make sure that you can go over and get it. I do have it posted over on Maxroll. So let me go ahead and see if I can do that again with that post, because it didn't look like it showed up the last time. So I'm going to go ahead and snag that, put that in here. And, look, I hope this helps you. I hope that this is something that you're able to utilize in your builds. And even if you're not playing the same way that I am, if you're wanting to get better at the Gauntlet, hopefully this shared, my ideas, my insights that have helped me hit the leaderboards each week, and just to make sure that haven't opened up the map or anything yet this week. Let me go ahead and pull this up. So rank 4 overall across all platforms last week on the solos, and then my buddy Scrounjon and I, we do some duos. We had that there. And so if we go to Hall of Ancients, there I am on the Xbox leaderboard. There I am on the overall, and it's the same thing if I'm bouncing back and forth between Xbox, because I'm a console player, so things are a little bit different for PC. The benefits on both sides of things just kind of depending on how you're playing. But if you go back and look, okay, week 4, same thing, number 2. So I just wanted, I'm always in that range from week to week. And these are the things that I'm using to help me get there. And hopefully, they're able to help you find enjoyment in the gauntlet, solve the puzzles, and make things better for yourself. So, thank you for checking out my build guide, and hopefully, this helps you. And I'll keep making them in the future if they're helpful for those of you that utilize them and watch.